So I spent just words about the context where this webinar is organized, because 2 years ago, and this is useful also for the colleagues Marta and Venki and also the other colleagues from other universities. 2 years ago, we launched this research center on artificial intelligence in value creation. And the goal of the research center is to understand how artificial intelligence in a broad sense, which includes also robotics, and also analytics, deep learning, natural language, so the different tools, how these techniques could help to provide value and how we can measure this value for the user. So the value could be in the design, could be in user interface, could be in the relationship with the customer. But also we aim to study how artificial intelligence change the business model and change the competition rule. So the goal of the research center is really to see how value creation is generated with the new techniques, the new technologies. A very important highlight is that the goal of the research center is not to analyze technicalities. It means artificial intelligence from the technical point of view. So we have another research center which is more focused on this. Our goal is to see how the technologies and how AI change impacts on management, because we are a business school, and so the perspective we adopt in studying this phenomenon is to see how management, how the different business model, the paradigm can be impacted by these new technologies and this new way to interact with the user, where users are the employees, but they could be also the partner in the network, or they could be also the customer. And inside the activities that the research center has developed in the past 2 years, we have launched a very successful seminar series in value creation. So since the beginning, the ambition of this seminar series was to invite the top scholar. Why this? Because the top scholar could open up the research, can give also a broad vision, could help also doctoral students or faculty to develop new area of research. And the goal of each seminar was really to generate a debate, to open up the research. And so just looking at this year, we had excellent contribution and speeches by, for example, Professor Gianvito Lanzolla, who is faculty dean at Cass Business School. We had also Yu Lim, who is a director of the MIT Design Lab, and she contributed looking at more the impact of AI on the design side. We had also Anna Jawornik looking at more how artificial intelligence and augmented reality impact the customer, so the marketing side. We hosted also a very rich debate on artificial intelligence and ethics. And this was a debate with Christine Balaguet from Institut Télécomines in Paris and Orange et IBM. So there was this debate. And okay, today I introduced just later. We have also other events scheduled in the upcoming 2 months that will be, of course, a webinar, because of not the possibility to organize them face-to-face in the campus. And the first event will be the presentation of internal fellowship projects. These 2 fellowship projects, these 2 presentations are scheduled on April 22 and April 24. There will be 2 webinars, and they are presented by Professor Ajay Kumar, who is a fellow inside the Research Center, and Anand Salam. So they will focus more on fake news for Ajay, and more on bias in artificial intelligence for Anand. And then in May, we have the pleasure also to host a very important speaker with Caroline Wertz. And Caroline is a faculty, so entrepreneurship dean at Cass Business School. So Caroline will join us via webinar on May 20. So today we have Venki. So thanks for joining us. I spent just 2 words to stress and to present you. You have a lot of achievements. So it's the biography tell all the achievements you got in your life. And I presented briefly only the most important one. So Venki is one among the world's most influential scientific minds by Thomson Reuters, and as a top 10 scholar worldwide on innovation. He is a three-time winner of the Crew Award for Outstanding Teaching. He has been a visiting faculty at MIT, INSEAD, Singapore Management University, Bocconi, Chinese European International Business School, and Indian School of Business. He is a research fellow of Northwestern University's Retail Analytics Council, and then he has a PhD in marketing from Kellogg, Northwestern University. And then I could say he's an editor of the top journal. He's also a leading person, humble person, that open up the research avenue, mainly in the field of digital marketing and digital transformation. And so personally, thank you greatly, because you opened up really a research area, and you supported a lot also my research and my career path. So thank you, Venki. I give you the ground to present your speech, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much, Margarita. And first of all, thank you to all of you for inviting me. I assume that this is a substitute. I was supposed to schedule to be there at the end of last month in person to present. So unfortunately, the turn of events didn't allow that to happen. But in that absence, I find that this is a better compromise than not having the opportunity to address it all. So thank you all for showing up today virtually, and also for inviting me. And I have to really commend Margarita and your team here for this wonderful initiative, because you're ahead of times to be really setting up a Center for AI so much in advance. Speaks volumes for your farsightedness, so I really applaud that. And Margarita, as she was very kind enough to introduce me, but I have to tell that I was very privileged and honored to have had her contribute to the Journal of Interactive Marketing during the formative stages, which some of her contributions, they're again ahead of time for those kind of topics. So I hope that EMLYON will continue the trajectory, being ahead of time. So today I'm going to talk about business as unusual. I call it unusual because things are going to be disrupted and different than business as usual. And part of this presentation, most of the presentation is based on my sabbatical work that I spent in the Silicon Valley a couple of years ago, also at Stanford University. And it was an eye-opener for me. And since then, I've been working more and more in this area and domain. And my plan for today is I want to go on uninterrupted for maybe 40 minutes or so, and then open the rest of the time for Q&A. And I know that within this format, it's a bit limiting. We cannot allow for frequent questions. So Margarita and her team have kindly agreed to take down your questions, and then I will look at it at the end and answer them maybe in the order it was received or in the order in which presented. So having said that, let me start by saying that I also owe a ton of gratitude to my own daughter, Prof SHANKAR, who taught me a little bit of deep learning and machine learning. I learned from her. She's currently a master's student at Stanford, and she's also working at a startup. And so let me start by saying that namaste, right? And because of the coronavirus or COVID-19, we all know the value of namaste now, which is a handshake has about 124 million bacterial transmissions possibly, and whereas a high five has about 55 million, fist bump has 7 million, and namaste has 0 bacterial transfer, or virus transfer. So I'm sure you're all practicing social distancing right now, even as I speak. But today, this is my brief agenda. This is my view of what AI is. A lot of you know what it is, but I will present what my view. I'll talk a little bit about prominent AI applications and spend not a whole lot of time, a little bit of time on post-COVID scenario, how would that look like, and what is the role of AI and how it'll accelerate some of the developments that we are already seeing before. Then I want to talk a little bit about my view of future outlook for AI and what should businesses do in an AI-led environment. So that's my agenda. And I'm going to, so this was basically a bunch of AI scenarios and movies that many of you may have seen, although many of them were actually in the late 90s and early 2000s. So we're very good fictional thinkers, but now many of them are actually becoming reality prediction models and so on. So maybe I start off by defining what artificial intelligence is. Like good academics, we always like to start with some definitions. And my way of looking at it is programs, algorithms, systems, or machines that demonstrate intelligence. So one simple way. Another way of looking at intelligence is comprising reasoning, knowledge, learning, perception, planning, etc. These are the skills that intelligent beings have. And so artificial intelligence means incorporating these skills. So AI incorporates advanced machine learning that includes deep learning, neural networks, natural language processing, and the likes. Intelligent implementations include physical devices such as robots, autonomous vehicles, consumer electronics, as well as apps and services, including virtual personal assistants, VPAs, smart devices, smart speakers, and so on. So these are some ways of viewing what artificial intelligence is. What are some of the AI applications that are becoming more commonplace and threatening to actually overtake some of the previous ways of doing business? Okay, I start with a cartoon like this. Many of you have seen this, right? You're very familiar now. All of you, your recent Amazon purchases, tweet score, and location history makes you 23.5% welcome here, right? Oh, they don't tell you how much percent you're welcome here, but they have a model to say where you stand in their pecking order, right? So this is happening even as we speak. And we all know, almost all of you may have one version of Amazon Echo or Google Home or any of the smart speakers. And in fact, Amazon is expecting to sell about 41 million of these Echo units by the year 2020. My presentation is going to be largely US-centric, but where relevant, I'm going to bring in the data and details from other parts of the world. But interesting thing about Echo speakers is Amazon has about 120 million Prime subscribers in the US, and they now will probably have 100 million of them using some kind of Echo speaker. So what does it mean? Because it means that Amazon is collecting data on almost all 100 million people. It's 1/3 of the US on a daily basis. So they have the AWS, and with that kind of data storage and data infrastructure, they have the capacity to really train almost every model and test almost every possible model using that database. Already companies such as GE, 800 Flowers, and even Procter & Gamble's Tide are using some of these speakers to predict when customers might need their next order of flowers or Tide or appliances and so on. IBM Watson has really been very, very keen to exploit this. For example, it has enlisted women's designer Marchesa to do the annual Met Gala, and it analyzes hundreds of images using computer vision and come up with more customized offerings. We all are familiar with Starbucks Siri-like virtual assistant, which started in 2017. In 3 years, it's captured about 20% of all the orders. So it's a basically natural voice enabled feature, and it is now becoming so commonplace that almost every business is compelled to look at adoption of this kind of a everyday use of AI. Many of you may not have heard of a company called Lowe's. It's a US-based retailer. Lowe's and Home Depot are the largest hardware retailers in the US. Lowe's has introduced a concept called Sci-Fi Geek. Some of you may be aware of that. They plan to unleash these robot assistants, which would be greeting people in their stores. the biggest problem, consumer pain in with respect to do-it-yourself home repair is that when people walk into the store, they have no clue because they're going into a huge store and that's got all kinds of places, divisions. And one of the learnings for Lowe's is that people want to be able to talk to somebody, and it's very hard to find someone because people are always, at the back of the store, they're trying to restock and so on. So what this Lowbots does is, using a natural language processing, it's almost like a chatbot that could actually greet you. Of course, it's going to be on wheels. So detect and engage idle customers. They can use the cameras to really understand where you are, which part of the store you are, and then come to you, greet you, and ask you questions. What are you looking for? Where you want to go? And then keeps tab on inventory to determine sales patterns. So unlike a conventional store, when you go and walk in and ask people, they'll have to go and call somebody or check something to see if something exists or not. But in this case, it knows everything, where things are not there. So it'll take you almost, walk with you to the store. And this is a concept that many stores will start embracing, and we will see that this will be replacing a lot of humans in the stores so that humans can do other more thought-oriented processes at the back end. And Cosabella, which is, again, many of you may have learned about it. It's a laundry brand, and it works with AI player called Sentient, tests a lot of designs, A/B tests lots on the fly, and then tries to really come up with offers. Now, all of this have been existing. I'm just giving you a few examples. There are lots more that you know of and you can come up with. But what COVID has done is, because now we are isolated, we are now getting used to digitally running our lives, what has happened is that we have now started to really accelerate the adoption of digital and analytics-based use of how consumers consume patterns, how we order things, how we pick up things, what are our preferences in movies, and what are our preferences in terms of clothes. All of these things are now being collected, and we are now increasingly, all the data are digitized. So what does it mean in terms of AI of the future? So here are some of the quick things that I can talk about. Let me see, it's got stuck, yeah. So there will be a new normal emerging after COVID-19 scenario subsides. And the uncertain demand that we see right now will become new normal, because we're not going to be able to predict demand that easily, because different parts of the world is going through COVID-19 spread in different ways. And unless we get a cure or a vaccine or both, this might come in waves and go. So the uncertain demand will continue to remain. So what's AI's role in that? AI's role would be basically, I'm trying to, somehow my thing is locked up. Yeah, we have to create a more nimble system of demand forecasting and fulfillment systems. And that already, some of the AI system that was developed to forecast has already started doing that. Another new normal will be increased digital purchase, because more and more customers are getting used to now ordering online, picking up, or ordering and getting delivered all kinds of items, right, ranging from grocery to durables to semi-durables. All of it is now digitized now. So personalized products and home delivery is becoming paramount importance. And more AI systems are picking that up. Prioritization of essential versus luxury items. One of the biggest downsides of this COVID-19 is the rapid decline in the purchase of luxury items, because people don't have time to think about it during these tough times. So many people have already prioritized what are their most essential items or the least essential items. So there's going to be increasing rationalization of product mix and more bundling. So in order for retailers and manufacturers to survive, they need some AI system that can actually bundle based on people's preferences. So that will become a more very active artificial intelligence system that firms will start using. Another new normal will be telemedical consultation. We're all getting used to talking to our doctor on the internet, over Zoom, over any kind of electronic media, and this will accelerate that. And in fact, retailers such as Walgreens, CVS, all of these, Walmart, they're already moving ahead of this. They want to set up a telemedical system, not with just doctors, but also accurate diagnostic AI. So for example, if I have data on a lot of people who have gone through different symptoms that relates to COVID, and so on, we can actually come up with an AI which can ask some very basic questions. Are you having fever? How long has the fever lasted? Is the fever accompanied by something else? So with just a very systematic way of doing this, we can do this in scale, because scale is very important for these kinds of epidemics. And so we could see this progressing much faster. Remote working, which is becoming a new normal now, will end up creating more productivity enhanced AI kits. So we'll start to get AI tools along with our Zooms. We'll start getting AI kits, much like our smart speakers. We'll get lots of modules that may actually enhance our productivity. It might actually, it's almost like we could actually dictate to this AI system saying that, well, right now, do my appointments, do my emails, do my seminar, all of the above. That will start becoming very common now. On-demand labor, because there's been a lot of displacement of jobs, particularly in the US. We've lost about close to 15 million jobs. And countries like France and most of Europe, you are more socialistic, so you guys have some here in the US at least, on-demand labor. Lots of companies are scrambling, especially the small, medium businesses here, restaurants, tourism-based businesses. They're all laid off a lot of people, but they will not need to hire back again. So what is the system? You can't just ramp up overnight. And so already labor supply demand match AIs are already being invented. So this is the beauty of adversities. Adversities, they say that adversity is the mother of invention. So in this case, COVID-19 might have become inadvertently a big adversity that has created a lot of these new inventions that's coming up in some way or the other in different parts of the US. And so these are some of the things that I see will accelerate in terms of that. And finally, digital payment. Digital payment used to be really stuttering on its way up. We know Venmos, we know Apple Pay, some e-wallets and all these things on the rise. But now with cash being very considered dangerous in many places because it could be tainted with coronavirus, everybody's shunning cash. Even retailers, small retailers who used to say that we depend on cash, they don't have to worry about it anymore. So we are going to get some kind of a payment concierge as an AI, which could actually tell us who accepts what kind of payment and how do we organize this payment. So we don't have to go through this different drills like, okay, I have to pay my gardener in cash, I have to pay my grocery bills in a credit card, and I have to pay my violin teacher in Venmo. All of the above can be actually concierged in payment AI. What are some of the future outlooks? These are some of the short-term things that I see, but I see a lot of medium-term and long-term, particularly if you look at the growth of AI. In 2016, the business value was about $645 million. In 2025, it's on pace to become a $37 billion business. And by the current projections, about 7% of the US jobs could be either displaced or replaced. And worldwide, it could be even more serious. But I was looking at France, and France has taken AI very seriously. So one of the things that struck me was this graphic from Roland Berger, which was trying to project where the AI funding is going in terms of startup activities. And I'm not sure if you can clearly see from where you are, but what this picture shows is the progression of AI funding in startups in 5 countries, or 4 countries plus the others, rest of Europe, I think. France, UK, Germany, Israel, and others. And it's tracked from 2014 to 2019, and the growth in AI-funded enterprises is about 55%. And the interesting graphs, the color-coded codes can be interpreted, those of you cannot see very clearly. The one in orange is UK, one in light blue is France, and Germany's maybe brown or orange, depending on how it shows up in your screen. Interestingly, UK was always ahead in AI startups and AI funding. In fact, in patent application, the UK is ahead of almost all the other European countries. But France is catching up. Apparently, in 2019, France is scheduled to have to really have as many, if not more, of the startups in AI-based startup, as many as 634 or so. So that means France is taking it seriously, although France is probably focusing more on things such as sustainability as some of the major areas in which AI will have a major role to play in the future. Having said that, I want to focus on a couple of things. One is, what can AI really do? Aside from the hype that we've been hearing, where is it headed in the short term and the long term, and how fast it'll likely spread? Okay, so I'm going to answer this one at a time. Let's start with what can it do, right? I want to say that it can probably do less now than you think, because there is a lot of hype always. Everybody wants AI to do hundreds of things overnight, and it doesn't happen. Where is it headed? It will eventually do more than what you and I would think. In more places, more widespread than we think. That means it can just sneak up on all of us and start spreading. It's just like as I was telling about smart speakers and smart AIs embedded in every part of our activity post-COVID-19, we could just slowly see that AI is already, encroached our lives, so much so that we may not even realize that. How fast it's going to happen? It's probably going to evolve faster than even the powerful technologies. Just to give you some kind of perspective, when I was at Stanford, I was trying to track the Artificial Intelligence Index, which is a joint index put out by Stanford and MIT. And the goal of the project is to collect, curate, and continuously update data so that we can better inform scientists, business people, inventors, policy makers, and the public. And what we find is they track the investments, the technology process, the scientific developments, university enrollments, job applications, and so on, and research citations, patents, and so on, and try to see where we stand in that. And this is also supplemented by another data that I'm going to talk about. I don't know why it's taking so difficult to move from one screen to the other. Okay, so Stanford has a 100-year study on AI 100. And some of the things that I learned is that it's the new index, not a single number, but a series of charts, graphs that tracks AI. And the interesting thing is it also collects qualitative data. So in other words, unstructured data like people's opinions, reports, collected from every place possible. So some of the indices or measures that they track is rate of improvement in image identification and speech recognition, startup activity, progress, job openings. There are also short essays by AI experts that they track. And what do we find? I want to show here 2 major developments that is very worthy of noticing in both image and speech recognition programs. These programs, artificial intelligence algorithms, have surpassed human capabilities just in the past year or 2. How so? Like if you track the progress of, for example, on the left side, the graph is about object detection. That is image processing. The accuracy starting in 2010 was very poor, just about 70%. Today, the image processing or computer vision has progressed to a certain level that it can exceed the human performance. So even we could be deceived by certain images, but computers may not be easily fooled. Having said that, I should caution because even both computers and humans can be fooled by what we call GANs, generative adversarial networks. And these are basically programs that try to trick both machines and computers, and still the computers are like the humans cannot do as well as 100% accuracy, but human performance is being exceeded by AI system only in the last couple of years. And speech recognition, we've caught up with, machines have caught up with us. And so much so that we know that Google Translate and everything is now working very well. McKinsey Global Institute is predicting that uncertainty surrounding AI and its coming effect on AI markets is going to be huge. In fact, they are predicting by 2030, the number of Americans who will be having to find new jobs will be 54 million. That's 3.5 times what this unemployment that I talked about. National Bureau of Economic Research, NBER, that the economists, they say that the rise of AI has not shown up in the AI economy as a whole, at least in numbers, but we will start to see the AI impact in the next couple of years. So basically, economists are always, long-term studies, past effects, and it takes a while for us to catch up the impact, but it's coming. And so what it means is that AI will, before we realize, AI will slowly start pervading. Just to give you a perspective of how fast AI is going to spread, let's imagine, compare it with electric engine. Many of us weren't alive in the 1880s, but apparently if you talk to anybody in the 1880s, the first electric engine was introduced, and nobody even thought that this could be a game changer. But in 40 years since then, people started seeing massive productivity gains, right? That's when World War I was concluded in 1929. US had the Great Depression and so on. Even so, they could see the productivity gains. So that took about 40 years. What about AI? AI is on a similar path, but much faster adoption, right? So what is a much faster adoption? Is it 5 years, 10 years, 20 years? Nobody knows, but definitely it's moving much faster than most of us can anticipate. So much so that now there could be AI bridging human capability. And many of you may know Elon's venture or his pet project, Neuralink, which tries to implant some kind of artificial chip on the brain so that to make our brain, human brain, enhanced AI. So some people call this enhanced AI, which is, of course, invites a lot of ethical debates because whether it's right or not. But for now, the Neuralink labs have just proved that human brains can be enhanced, particularly by showing on people with handicapped conditions such as cerebral palsy, so that people can move their limbs based on this chip in the brain that's trying to help them. But of course, that is the initial efforts to just enhance people's neuro abilities. But what the future portends is very unclear. If you take it to the next level, can the implanted AI chips now can have artificial memory? So what it means is that you and I don't have to remember anything. So if we have the chip, probably can recover a lot of things very quickly. But how we can meld this two remains a question. But here's something that intrigued me in the last year or so. There has been this concept called mind reading. That is, can AI be used to read our minds? Why is this important in business? Because if you can read anybody's minds, it is worth gold, worth its weight in gold. But particularly in marketing and consumer behavior, if marketers can read consumers' mind rather than trying to really guess what you like or what you're thinking, this experiment was done by a bunch of researchers in Japan and UK. I don't remember now, but definitely a Japanese researcher, was in the forefront. And the idea was that, can I use some kind of a image? Can I start looking at your brain and start imaging what your brain is thinking, right? So the screen imagine interface in this picture is, let's say, a lion, and using an fMRI feature decoder, it tries to decode what it's thinking. And they have been able to reconstruct an image which doesn't look like a lion, but or a tiger, but it looks like it gets close to an animal, right? So what it means is that there is some progress. By the same researchers, they also try to reconstruct different alphabets in people's minds. And you can see in this one, there's a bunch of alphabets at the top starting with A, C, I, N, and so on. It almost looks like, you walk into an optometrist shop to look at this and they ask you to read these things, right? But here it is, the mapping is what your brain is thinking, this is not actual images. So if the brain is thinking an A, C, then can you actually capture? And you see 2 rows below the actual alphabets, and the 3rd row is the most advanced row in terms of image recognition, and they are able to show this A, C, E not quite close, but I looks pretty similar, and so on. So that means that there's a lot of potential in here. So if they continue that, and I didn't show you in the previous slide, the decoder is basically a deep learning machine, right? What it does is basically takes the input image and then does a very, very compressed deep neural network, DNN, and then is able to really spit out this reconstructed image. So what I'm saying is that there is a lot of potential now for AI to accelerate, because there are more and more data is stored, more and more data is collected. Because of our lockdown, we're giving a lot of data, digital data, right? And that's actually going to become a training data set, and then it allows AI to really more accurately predict it. We may have vision as a new interface. One prediction is 10% of reading glasses could be connected to internet by 2023. Now, 5G is becoming is coming out very soon, which will make very fast transmission of a lot of things. And wearable internet, we might have, using IoT's Internet of Things, we could have, many of the clothes have some embedded IoTs that would make connectivity to internet a piece of cake. In fact, so much so that we can all have a supercomputer in our pockets. By one projection, 90% of global population, including the Buddhist monk here, may have a supercomputer, if not in their pocket, somewhere on them. And the folklore was that these Buddhist monks used to communicate to each other using telepathy. Now they don't even need that. They can actually use a smart device or some kind of a smartphone, and they should be able to connect and have the power of a supercomputer in 20, 30 years ago. And the internet of and for things, we're going to have 1 trillion sensors connected in a couple of years. We should have the connected homes. We'll have more things collected. We'll have self-driving cars, which has gone through some hiccups, but it might resume, because cars in general after the post-COVID is facing a hard time. And with the electric acceleration in electric cars and self-driving, we might have more connected device. In fact, I know there's one startup in the Bay Area which is very, very busy. They're trying to actually deep analyze all the data, driving data, real-time data, and are able to predict exactly how consumers are going to behave every instant, and connecting there with their buying and purchase patterns. And I think that might become a very serious avenue for AI to be used in a widespread basis. What about AI in decision making? This is all about the consumer and the user side, but what about decision makers, managers, leaders? there's a prediction that first AI machine or AI system will join corporate board of directors by year, I'm not able to see it here, but I believe it's 2030. We can have that. In fact, Jack Ma, the founder of Alibaba, has remarked that he would like to see that an AI CEO, which is really even more dramatic. But Jack Ma can have his wish come true. He might actually make AI the CEO of one of his group companies. So he might actually make that happen. But the point is that AI is being increasingly relied upon. There are a few scenarios that were striking for me. Many of you who may follow hedge funds and mutual funds might notice that they have reported that AI-assisted stock picking is now starting to outperform humans. So much so that Larry Fink, who is the chairman and CEO of one of the largest mutual funds, he's going all out to predict using AI for most of the stock picks and fund picks. So we could see a rapid progression of AI, if not replacing some of the humans, but at least being very closely assisting them. And then the sharing economy, which has really come to a grinding halt after COVID-19 with Airbnb and Ubers in hibernation right now. But if people start sharing a lot of things because either they're worried about owning a lot of things because people want to be asset light now in this world where their incomes, they don't know where they're coming from, this is going to become more AI driven too. So what are some of the implications for managers here? Okay, so managers will have no choice but to embrace and embed machine learning, predictive analytics, AI in all parts of their decision making. And deep learning models are going to become almost like, we're going to get so used to it that we won't even start asking anything. And initially people were asking, oh, I don't want to use deep learning because it's a black box. I don't know what's going in, what's going out, right? We definitely want to understand what's going on, but we may not have a choice now. We may have to embrace this because they're able to predict better. So we'll say, let it predict now. Let's figure out how to really understand what's going on inside the black box. So more predictions lead to more understanding. So causal modeling, causal-based machine learning is becoming more popular now. Doing continuous experimentation. All of us are able to do lots of experiments now, much more easier because, as I said, you can do A/B tests on the fly and with a lot of AI systems now with increasing digitization of all activities. Optimization, resource allocation based on AI is becoming very common. We know in marketing, we've done a lot of digital allocation on the fly on that, but it's extending everywhere. Look at supply chain, post-COVID situations. A lot of retailers now using AI-based systems to really allocate demand. Because right now we can get real-time demand on how people are ordering, whether they're crazy enough to order toilet papers more, or they're crazy enough to order more of one product than the others. All of these are now real-time captured, and AI is assisting in fulfilling the supply chain. Combining deep learning and neuroscience to make decisions, that's the ones that I talked about, the developments, trying to use a deep neural network to model what our brain is processing. I think that's where the future is, where we can actually get them together and use the collective learning from them. So I'm going to start. I know I started late. We had a hiccup. We're almost 9:54, and I want to leave some time for questions. I wanted to leave with the video, but since Margarita said videos are not being seen, I'm going to stop here. I was going to show the Amazon Go store, which is now becoming very relevant in the post-COVID situation where people are practicing social distancing. They don't want to have human beings there. Amazon Go is a store where you can just cashierless checkout, no checkout stores. You walk in, you replenish your cart, and then walk out. And this might actually accelerate the progress of AI. With a lot of retailers, malls in distress, these kind of automated stores might become a thing, and AI will become very important. So I'm going to stop here because I've exceeded my time, and thank you very much for your kind patience. I have a ton of work on this, so I am happy to work with you on this. If any of you have any questions on this, and this is my email address, venki@venkishankar.com. So feel free to email me after this presentation if you want more of this, or you want to engage with me on this. And I'm always open to new projects and learning more things, working with other people. So I'm going to stop here and take some questions, if that is okay with you. Margarita, is that okay? You have about 8 or 10 more minutes, yeah?
Yeah. So thank you, Venki, for this super seminar. So we can, so thanks. Now we dedicate some time for the Q&A, so for the question. And I had a question, I open up this Q&A. So if we think about the role of AI and not in automation, so to optimize the processes, to make the processes better. But if we think the role of AI and human, and in creative task, we can see that, and you mentioned that sometimes the AI can outperform the human, so that allow them to do things that otherwise they could not do. You showed
Right.
the example of reading the mind or hedge funds, so how we can manage money or in the financial services. Or otherwise, I could say how AI can allow people to do creative things. And you mentioned it, okay, I can use artificial intelligence to do some task, and so I free up time to do other things that are more creative, so I can enhance the activity. About you, which is the borderline between these two aspect of AI and human, and which critical aspect need to be considered? It's a matter
Okay,
of
first of all, thank you for this thoughtful question. It's a great question. I think creativity is one area. Human beings have always had an edge over AI, but even that barrier is coming down. My daughter, I'm sorry to put a plug on this one. This is not the same daughter, Shreya, who's in Stanford. She's Sarah. She's going to be a freshman next year, but she's a musician. She's a singer-songwriter, composer, and so on. And she's using AI in her own music creation. And she's the most creative person, I thought. Her profession is definitely very creative. But she's telling me, Dad, you don't know what's going on here. So I'm learning a little bit. So they are using some AI to create certain interludes and certain snippets when they're actually writing songs and composing things. So I see a blend of humans and AI, even in tasks that require a lot of creativity, such as music and, let's say, other artistic elements. Because AI can actually learn very fast and make certain repetitive tasks easier, which we all know. But what AI can also do is AI can also analyze creative tasks and give insights that the creative artist or creative person may not have really thought about, which is actually the augmentation of creativity. So I feel like the human AI interaction is a very promising area. But along the same lines, I see that there is an opportunity for us to better understand on which areas we can actually enhance and which areas actually human beings will still be ahead for a long period of time. Those need to be really tested and understood, right? Like in marketing, we used to think that advertising copywriting is a very creative area, right? And if you notice now, all the digital agencies, even the most creative people are very analytically savvy. So there is a morphing that's going on. So I still feel that there is a huge potential there for human interaction, creative alone, but there's also the human element of compassion, human element of trust, all of the above not being quite captured by AI as of now. So perhaps that's another area very open to research. Again, this is more research friendly rather than immediately practitioner friendly. Although, as I said, creative AI is being used in creative professions in a limited way that could expand.
Thank you, Venki.
Are there other questions? I think.
Hi, Venki.
Yes.
Yeah, first of all, thank you so much for this wonderful presentation on the topic how the AI is reshaping the businesses these days. My question is, what is the biggest barrier to the future of the AI?
That's a great question. I wish I can put my finger on it.
Because
I can mention a few barriers.
Okay.
I think one of the, I think technological barriers is not a big issue. What would be two barriers I see as very key is ethics and safety, right? I know I'm not saying as a barrier, that's a gray areas. These are unresolved. Ethics, I mean, what should be the way, it also includes bias, diversity, inclusion, all those things. You know, what's the correct way to develop AI systems? I mean, you don't want to create AI systems that marginalize certain elements of the society and, you know, empower certain elements of the society. So we need to have a clear debate and have some consensus, which I think only now people are starting to research. I think that's a great area of research too. So my feeling is if we don't resolve the ethical issue, there could be some development. Some people may be really taking off AI in one direction without a regard for ethics, and that could pose that's also connected a little bit with safety, the other barrier that I talked about, because we need to develop a very safe AI system. By safe, I mean, you know, some people have been talking about AI, you know, gone Frankenstein's monster and so on. I'm not really depicting those doomsday scenarios right now, but really developing AI in such a way that they don't start to really trample on people's rights. They don't start to do crazy things that could be not just individually harmful, but also collectively as a society more harmful. So that's why I think if we need to have more consensus, more debate, more research on this really to make sure that, so in fact, I'm starting to work a couple of projects on the safety aspect, which is more technologically connected too. So these two would be my answers to that.
Yes, I think you are the right. Human privacy and the security, I think, are the biggest issues. Like for example, in your PPT, you have discussed about the Amazon Alexa. So Amazon Alexa, basically the problem is Amazon Alexa is recording the private conversation in a person's home, and companies are using this data for the targeted marketing. So basically, you can say this is the dark side of the AI. So
Correct.
you can see the both side of the AI, dark side and the sunny side of the AI in this particular case. So I think these are the biggest issues: human privacy and the security. We have.
Thank you. Are there any other questions?
Hello.
Yeah, Aditya.
Hi, thank you, Venki. That was really a nice presentation. So I just have one question about what is your opinion about the contribution of AI to the field of clean energy and how we can reduce the greenhouse gases. I think because this is one of the most pressing needs of the world right now.
Right. I think I've not even touched, scratched the surface. For example, so I mentioned briefly about sustainability. Comes under the part of sustainability and clean energy. There's also, we didn't talk about healthcare too, which is another huge piece where AI is going to play a huge part. But in clean energy, AI has such a huge role to play because, you know, starting from what are the, you know, a lot of clean energy is all about improving means of generating energy. And for that, you have to track the performance of different sources of energy over a period of time. So that's from the generation point of view. And then usage, how to get everybody to use and adopt clean energy. And that there's a huge amount of role that AI can play, but basically showing people how clean energy has to be used and how it can result in a collective improvement. You know, many of you know that UN has come up with a very dire report. By 2050, we're going to have, the planet is going to have lots of issues, not just in the sustainability part of it, but even the ecosystem of food and food agricultural needs, how we need to, depend less on meat and more on vegetables. All of these are related to somewhat the energy. So tracking that and really tracking the consumption and altering our usage pattern, AI has a huge role to play. And then getting automated systems basically to really handle this energy. So many of these new forms of energy, electric and non-fossil fuel based, can be automated very well. And I think that's where AI can accelerate the automation. So bottom line is AI has so much of role to play in that. Question is, it requires a lot of coordination, investments, and they are not going to pay off in 5 years or even sometime 10 years. So many of these are long-term. So that's where I think the foresighted investments have to take place.
Okay, thanks. Thank you, Venki.
Thank you, Aditya. So are there any more? Sometimes it's very difficult for me to look at here. All the screens appear to be frozen for me.
Yeah. Other question?
Hello.
Andrei?
Yes, I would like to know your opinion about low-tech AI. In my view, because of the rare earth materials are going to be more rare in the future. We know that Elon Musk himself said that we had to choose between developing between energy technologies and AI technologies, or I don't remember exactly what he said, but we had to make a choice because we don't have enough materials to have every technologies. So what is going to be the impact on AI in this context? Are we going to have, because we are going to make choice, what are the priorities to make? And is a low-tech AI possible?
Andres, great question. By low-tech AI, I mean you are talking about AI being embedded in lots of day-to-day tasks like IoTs and devices and so on, I assume. So the minerals and metals that be required in huge abundance, that's the trade-off in terms of the planet actually allocating resources. But I'm not an expert in metallurgy or energy, but from my limited understanding, I'm an engineer by training. Nobody's perfect, right? So I can speak a little bit to the idea of this exploding need. We're all getting really used to using lots of chips and devices, right? And in fact, we've been blessed over we've had such a blessed ride in the last 50 years or so, the advancement in chip manufacturing and technology. So much so that, the Moore's Law, which many of you know, right? Every 18 months, chips become faster, cheaper, and smaller, right? So it's doubling the capacity, doubling of, halving of the size and halving of the price. So that has been going on for a very long time, and we've been very blessed. But we're going to hit some limit on that. And the limit is that when the chip really becomes the size of an atom, we cannot miniaturize anymore. Back Intel and the other chip makers predict by 2026 itself, we might reach the limit. And it's very interesting. Many of you may not realize this. When you reduce the chip to the size of the atom, there's only all the processing speed will stop. But we need to get those silicons, we need to get all those germaniums, the metals that we're talking about, rare earths. Right now, for battery technology even, NiCad, lithium, all of these need some minerals too. I think we're supposed to have enough in supply. And the world population, which is 7.6 billion now, it's not going to really explode beyond 2050, maybe 10 billion or so. But what's going to happen afterwards is going to be if the climate change happens and we have other consequence scenarios, that's when the trade-offs will happen. And my own feel is that we may start to, just like we are right now, right? We never thought about, saving the planet, utilizing this. Now we're starting to consume less of plastic and so on. We may not even hit the situation where we think that these things will be scarce and we need to be doing it until maybe we hit like 2040, 2050, and people will wake up and say, hey, we've been using many of this too much and we need to stop using that. I have a feeling that somehow unless we have some kind of behavioral modification collectively across the planet, we'll still continue to get used to this abundance. And even if our performance stops, the chip performance will continue to ride with that till whatever progress we have. And then we'll probably ask the question later on down the line. But right now, we're unstoppable in terms of miniaturization or whatever it is till we hit that limit. And so strangely, I found out that the whole observable universe has a finite number of atoms. So I don't know if anybody knows, it's a trivia question. The observable universe has only 10 to the power 82 number of atoms that can be packed in this universe. So that we will hit some threshold at some point in time, and then we'll start to rationalize what we do. But I don't know whether I will be alive when that happens. That's a terrific question, Andres. I don't know, Elon can see probably so many years ahead, but I cannot see that many years ahead. Are there any other questions? Catherine, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just thinking about Internet of Things, and I was wondering who's going to lead the game. I mean, do we have to be interested in those guys manufacturing AI solution, or those who are manufacturing, for instance, those devices that are going to be equipped with AI? I'm still wondering. I mean, you were talking about those big changes like smart farming, for instance, and as a scholar, should I get interested in those who are manufacturing tractors and putting sensors on them, or those who are just manufacturing those AI solutions? Because on the end, the world is also a physical one, and so it's just about the future of our job as scholars. Do we have to be interested in the very technical parts, or do we have to get interested in those who are going to use those AI solutions?
Fantastic question. It depends on where your researchers, are you a business researcher in AI, or you're a technology researcher, a technical researcher? Technology researchers will be interested in both the hardware and the software and the systems that connect that. As a business, we tend to typically look at the holistic things, the systems more so than just that. Obviously, like in any other part of the ecosystem, every part of the ecosystem, the manufacturing of components like chips to software or the algorithms provider, the connector, the data storage companies, the integrators, all of these will have a role to play. And, as it is, you can see, for example, Internet of Things, there's a lot of companies, including the Microns, the Intels, the AMDs, they're all supplying chips, and they will be really there for a while. NVIDIA, for example, the graphic chips that enable AI, they will be a big player because they augment all the capabilities. But there's a ton of soft algorithm players who are coming up with more applied solutions, AI solutions. There's a lot of holistic AI systems providers who are, there's a lot of cloud infrastructure players, and I think all of them will have a role to play. And there'll be, like the usual economics and business where some players, there'll be shakeouts, and players will be, acquired by others and so on. But interestingly, we see the companies like Amazon, Microsoft, Google, they'll always be there because they're trying to grab all the companies that are making a play. So we'll see a lot of, unless some antitrust regulations or something's come about, we see a lot of these big players will still be around for at least a conceivable length of time. But there could be a tipping point in certain things, which I feel like it's going to happen so quickly that some companies might actually, be out of business because the business model will become obsolete. That's where we as scholars, we have to keep looking at business models. I feel like business models will become very important to study.
Yeah, or maybe put in other words, my feeling was, will it be more difficult in the future to manufacture a tractor or to be able to manage an algorithm in the end? Because if ever it's the first solution, I do have to invest on a very classical company. If ever technology is going on, maybe it will be easier tomorrow to be an expert in algorithm than on manufacturing a tractor, or I don't know which other classical equipment.
The answer to that will depend on which company you're asking. So suppose you're asking a tractor, already current existing tractor manufacturing company like John Deere, Caterpillar, right? They are already invested in manufacturing. They feel like they know manufacturing well, and so they want to leverage their core capability. But if you're talking to a technology player in Silicon Valley, right, like one of the startups, some of the startups that I'm talking to, they know that they can change the whole dynamics of the game. Just like, how automotive industry how the GMs and the Ford are being now threatened by Tesla is threatened by Waymo, which is Google's unit of this, because these players will start connecting these, and they could be a big player rather than the manufacturers in the ecosystem, right? But having said that, the manufacturers will have a role to play, but they have to figure out how their business model will evolve, right? So tractor manufacturers are not going to abandon and say, hey, I'm Caterpillar, I'm just going to stop manufacturing, I'm just going to get into algorithm development, right? They cannot make the transition because they don't have the DNA to do that. So they have to morph their business model and say, hey, I may have to play. Already Caterpillar, for example, is a more service-oriented business model. They are basically giving farmers forecasting systems, algorithms, and other things. That's what helps them sell the tractors. But tractors is where their core capabilities, and they'll make margins. But Catherine, you bring a very good point, which is manufacturing itself is going to be redefined, right? Which Tesla has already shown that manufacturing, not just for automobile, any manufacturing is now going to be driven by a whole bunch of AI algorithms. So, we are used to taking an iPhone, and basically the whole iPhone, every time there is an OS change or something's changed, it's all driven by that, right? It's not really the hardware. Sometimes, you break some things and you get repaired, or the glass. But if you look at automobiles, traditionally, every time you have an issue, you'll take automobile to a dealer and then get it repaired, or some kind of repair shop. So you have to take it and repair the hardware. Now, Tesla's system was, we will give all everything. You don't have to bring the car unless you need to physically change a tire or something. Everything we do a software update or boot. That's where the tractor manufacturers and all the lawnmower makers, they will have to make the change. They'll have to make these think of as devices, not as vehicles or this devices which will have software and will have AI algorithms driving that. And then they will basically update all that, and that'll move. And that's where I think manufacturing is going to change. And so the existing manufacturers will have to anticipate that kind of a module that they have to build in it, so that it's entirely software. Already, if you look at many of the cars that are coming, like BMW or Mercedes, it is so driven by software that you cannot even understand if something is faulty, whether it's a hardware failure or something, because most of the times it's a software update that does the trick. And that's where I think everything is going. If AI has its way, and AI is rapidly encroaching all of the manufacturing now.
That's great. Thank you so much.
That's a great question there. Thanks.
Thank you.
So thank you, Venki. I have a final question, if I have a few minutes. The emergence of artificial intelligence brings also changes in the competition environment. So there is the emergence of the platform, AI-enabled platform, and a different way to compete. So the different player can work. You mentioned before Alexa or Echo, Google Echo. So these companies became platform in some way, and so they work with different sites. The concept of multi-sided platform. So my question is, how AI changes the competition in the ecosystem? So how a platform AI-enabled can defend the competitive advantage, and how the competition can change?
Right, that's a fascinating. We know that last 10 years, so the platform-based companies have really successfully shown the world that's where the power is, right? If you look at the market cap of the top 4 tech companies, Apple, Amazon, Microsoft, Google, Facebook to a certain extent, all of these have demonstrated, and of course, if you add Alibaba and from China, all of these have shown that platform-based, that's the business side of things where you create value creation. And Google has recognized AI to be the fundamental driver. So it was one of the first companies to say, we want Google to be an AI-powered company, AI-first company. So AI first was their mantra. So AI is so fundamental now, as we heard from Andres and some other people, you can have an AI in a very low-tech embedded, which is basically enhancing capabilities and decision-making, all the way to AI, managing the society as a whole. But with the platform comes a lot of benefits for the platform companies, where they control certain parts of the platform. Like Amazon now, with AWS, 70% of the companies are reliant on that. But what might happen is that AI could assist them, but AI could also enable the non-platform companies to actually disrupt the platform companies. Because, platform multi-sided markets, they establish a system and people actually get used to the system and then start working in that market system. But then AI can come and disrupt it completely. Just like ride sharing took away taxi business, just like, Airbnb took away all this business. Now it could be disrupted. There could be so many other platform companies that could emerge that could actually use AI to disrupt that, right? And so we don't know when that's going to happen, how that's going to happen, and that's why technology is always fun to watch out. I've been researching internet and AI, like Margarita said, from the 90s, and I couldn't have imagined lots of things. I didn't imagine Google going from a search engine to a dominant player today. I couldn't imagine Amazon going from a pure e-commerce player to the big company it is now. I can imagine a company like Facebook coming at 2006 and establishing such a huge presence. So you never know when things are coming out, but that's really makes this whole thing very interesting as a researcher, to be in the game and enjoy it as you see this discovered. But I still feel like AI could be used by both the platform companies and the challengers effectively.
Thank you, Venki. Thanks.
Appreciate it. Thank you all for a wonderful time, and hope to hear from you later on.
So thank you very much for this great seminar.
Namaste,
Thank you.
Namaste.
Appreciate it.
And thank you to all the participants. And I
you all.
remind the next seminar with Jay is on April 22. So it is next week, and you can find all the information on the website or the Twitter account. So,
thank you so much, all of you.
Stay safe to all of you. Thanks.
Yeah, stay safe. Thank you. Ciao.
Ciao, Venki. Thanks. Thanks a lot.
A bientôt. Au revoir. À demain.